My wife's boss's gorgeous wife sat in front of me and said, "You won't believe it, but your wife is sleeping with my husband." Before I could even answer, she interrupted, "Forget her. How about a night with me instead?" I agreed, and let me tell you, it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. Welcome back to Inspiration Seeker. Today, I'm sharing a story about betrayal, unexpected alliances, and the ultimate revenge that proves living well really is the best payback. If you enjoy stories where the underdog takes back control, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like icon, and comment down below. Team Robert, if you're ready to see how this plays out. Now, let's get into the story. Life in the suburbs of New York is supposed to be the dream, right? A nice house, a steady job, and a loving partner to come home to. For a long time, I thought I had it all. My name is Robert, and I've always been the type of guy who believes in hard work and loyalty. I worked long hours in logistics to make sure the mortgage was paid and the fridge was full, simply because I wanted my wife, Jessica, to have everything she needed. But lately, the dream felt more like a lonely sentence in solitary confinement. Jessica is 30 years old, blonde, ambitious, and undeniably beautiful. When we first got married, she looked at me like I was the only man on earth. But over the last 6 months, that warmth had evaporated, replaced by a chilling distance that I couldn't bridge no matter how hard I tried. She was climbing the corporate ladder at a high-end marketing firm in Manhattan, and apparently, the view from the top didn't include me. Every conversation we had felt forced, like two strangers making small talk in an elevator. I'd ask her about her day, and I'd get one-word answers. Fine. Busy. Tiring. The intimacy in our marriage had completely withered away. She was always too tired, or too stressed, turning her back to me the moment she got into bed. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic breathing of a woman who felt thousands of miles away, even though she was lying right next to me. The excuses were always the same, and they always revolve around one name: Gavin. Gavin needs this report by morning. Robert, I can't talk right now. She would snap at me while furiously typing on her phone at the dinner table. Or, Gavin is relying on me to lead the new campaign. I have to stay late again. I tried to be understanding. I told myself that she was just driven, that this was a phase. I convinced myself that I was being supported by not complaining when she came home at midnight smelling of expensive wine and high-end cigars, since that certainly didn't come from our house. I felt less like a husband and more like a utility provider. I was there to keep the lights on and the house warm, while she lived her real life somewhere else. Deep down, a knot of suspicion was tightening in my stomach, but I was too afraid to pull the string and see what unraveled. The breaking point didn't happen in the quiet of our home. It happened under the dazzling chandeliers of a 5-star hotel in Manhattan. It was the night of Jessica's company's annual gala. This was a black-tie event, the kind where the champagne cost more than my weekly paycheck, and the air is thick with pretension. Weeks before the event, Jessica had been on edge, obsessing over her dress, her hair, and every minute detail. But when it came to me, her concern wasn't about how I looked. It was about how I would behave. On the ride into the city, the silence in the car was deafening. I was driving, and Jessica was busy checking her makeup in the visor mirror, barely acknowledging my presence. When we finally pulled up to the valet, she turned to me, her blue eyes cold and critical. She reached over and adjusted my bow tie, not with affection, but with a sharp, correcting tug. "Listen, Robert," she said, her voice low. "Tonight is extremely important for my career. There are investors here, and Gavin is going to be announcing the new senior partner soon. Please, just try not to talk too much about your work. It's boring to these people. Just smile, drink your scotch, and let me handle conversation. I need everything to be perfect." It stung. It stung worse than a slap. My wife was ashamed of me. To her, I wasn't her partner. I was a liability she had to manage. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was suffocating. I felt like an imposter in my own tuxedo. Jessica immediately let go of my arm the moment we entered the main hall, vanishing into the crowd to network. I was left standing there, holding a drink I didn't want, watching the woman I loved work the room. And then I saw him. Gavin. He was standing near the center of the room, holding court like a king. He was 45, with silver-streaked hair, and a suit that probably cost more than my car. But what made my stomach churn wasn't his wealth. It was the way Jessica gravitated toward him. She glided over to his circle, and her entire demeanor changed. Her shoulders relaxed, her laugh became louder, and her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen in years. I watched from a distance as she placed a hand on his forearm, a touch that lingered just a few seconds too long to be professional. They leaned in close to whisper something to each other, shutting out the rest of the world. It wasn't the behavior of an employee and a boss. It was the intimacy of two people who shared a secret. Standing there, surrounded by hundreds of people, I had never felt more invisible. I couldn't stomach the sight of them anymore. The way Gavin whispered in her ear, the way she threw her head back laughing at jokes that I knew weren't that funny. It made me physically sick. I felt like an intruder in a world that I had helped build by supporting her all these years. Needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom, I turned on my heel and retreated to the hotel bar, a dimly lit sanctuary tucked away from the blinding camera flashes and the drone of fake laughter. I found a spot at the far end of the mahogany counter, as far away from the celebration as I could get. I loosened my bow tie, signaled the bartender, and ordered a double bourbon. Neat. I needed something strong to burn away the knot of humiliation tightening in my chest. I sat there, tracing the rim of my glass, wondering when exactly my marriage had turned into this hollow charade. Was I just a fool? Or was I simply too blind to see what was happening right in front of me? Then the air shifted. I smelled her perfume before I actually saw her, a sophisticated blend of jasmine and something darker, more mysterious. It was a kind of scent that commanded attention. A woman slid onto the velvet stool, right next to me. She was breathtaking. She wore a floor-length crimson silk dress that clung to her figure in all the right places, a sharp, vibrant contrast to the black and white monotony of the rest of the gala. I knew who she was immediately. I had seen her photos in the business magazines Jessica left lying around the house. This was Veronica, Gavin's wife. Up close, she was even more stunning than in the pictures. She had long brunette hair that cascaded over one shoulder and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. But despite her elegance, there was a hardness in her expression, a tension in her jaw that mirrored my own. She didn't look at me at first. She just stared straight ahead at the rows of expensive liquor bottles, her posture rigid. Vodka martini. Dry. Very dry, she told the bartender, her voice smooth but edged with steel. When the drink arrived, she took a long, deliberate sip, as if gathering liquid courage. Then she slowly swiveled her seat to face me. The look she gave me wasn't one of polite, social recognition or pity. It was a look of calculation, a mixture of shared misery and intense curiosity. "You're Robert, aren't you?" she asked, though the tone suggested she already knew the answer. She swirled the olive in her glass, her eyes locking onto mine. The husband who was told to stand in the corner while the adults play. Her words were a direct hit, stripping away the thin layer of denial I had been wrapping myself in all night. I opened my mouth to defend Jessica, to say something about networking or career advancement, but the words died in my throat. Veronica didn't blink. She just watched me with that unsettling intensity, waiting for me to catch up to reality she had evidently been living in for quite some time. "I can see you want to be the good husband, Robert. It's noble. Stupid, but noble," she said, placing her glass down on the coaster with a sharp clink. "But let's cut the pleasantries. You and I both know they aren't out there discussing quarterly projections or marketing strategies." She reached into her small, beaded clutch and pulled out a sleek smartphone. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency before she slid the phone across the polished mahogany bar toward me. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago," she stated calmly, as if she were discussing the weather. Swipe. My hand trembled as I reached for the device. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. The screen lit up and my entire world went dark. The first photo was grainy but unmistakable. It was Jessica and Gavin, but not at a business lunch. They were walking into the lobby of the Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue. The timestamp was from last Tuesday, the night Jessica swore she was pulling an all-nighter at the office to fix a client crisis. I swiped left. The next photo was clearer. They were at a secluded table in a dimly lit restaurant. Gavin's hand resting intimately on Jessica's cheek, her eyes closed, leaning into his touch with a look of pure adoration. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The air left my lungs. Every late night, every business trip, every time she turned away from me in bed, it all flooded back to me in a sickening wave of clarity. They had been at it for months, Veronica whispered, leaning closer so only I could hear. Expense accounts used for weekend getaways, secret dinners, hotel rooms booked under corporate codes. We are the punchline to their joke, Robert. I gripped the edge of the bar, so hard my knuckles turned white. A fire ignited in my chest, a burning mixture of heartbreak, and a rage so pure it terrified me. The woman I had sacrificed everything for wasn't just working hard. She was working hard at betraying me. My first instinct was pure, unadulterated chaos. I didn't just want to confront them. I wanted to destroy them. I wanted to march right back into that ballroom, overturn the table, and scream the truth until every single investor and colleague knew exactly what kind of people Gavin and Jessica really were. I stood up abruptly, the heavy wooden bar stool screeching against the floor, drawing the attention of a few patrons nearby. I didn't care. My vision was tunneling. All I could see was the image of Gavin's hand on my wife's face. I took a step toward the door, my fists clenched so tight my fingernails dug into my palms. But before I could take another step, a hand clamped around my wrist. It wasn't gentle hold. It was a grip of iron. "Sit down, Robert," Veronica hissed, her voice low but commanding. "Do not make a scene. That is exactly what they want. You go out there screaming now, and you look like the crazy, jealous husband. Gavin will spin it. Jessica will play the victim, and you'll be escorted out by security while they laugh about it in the limo ride home." I stopped, my chest heaving. She was right, and I hated it. I looked down at her, seeing the fire in her blue eyes. She wasn't just angry. She was strategic. She pulled me back down onto the stool, waiting until my breathing slowed slightly before she leaned in close. The scent of her jasmine perfume filled my senses again, intoxicating and dangerous. "Look at me," she said softly. "They took something from us. They took our dignity. If you walk out there now, you lose. But if you play this my way, we win." I frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Veronica paused, letting the ambient jazz music fill the silence between us. She tilted her head, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "Your wife is sleeping with my husband," she said, reciting the facts with brutal clarity. "So, forget her. Forget the scene. Forget the shouting match. How about a night with me instead?" The world seemed to stop spinning. I stared at her, stunned. I was expecting legal advice, maybe a plan to expose their emails. I certainly wasn't expecting the beautiful, sophisticated wife of a billionaire to proposition me in a hotel bar. "Excuse me?" I stammered. "You heard me," she whispered, her hand sliding from my wrist to rest gently on top of my hand. "They are up in a suite right now, or planning to be. Why should they be the only ones having fun? Why should we be the victims crying in the dark? Tonight, we can be the villains in their story. What do you say, Robert?" I looked at the door, leading back to the ballroom, thinking of Jessica. I thought about the vows we made, the home we built, and the lies she was whispering to Gavin at this very moment. Then I looked back at Veronica. In her eyes, I didn't just see a proposition. I saw a lifeline. I saw a way to stop feeling like the pathetic, oblivious husband and start feeling like a man again. "Let's go," I said. My voice was rough, barely recognizing it as my own. We didn't say another word as we left the hotel. We didn't take my car, and we certainly didn't take a taxi. A sleek, black town car was waiting for her at the curb. As we drove through the neon-lit streets of Manhattan, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was charged with electric anticipation. The city blurred past the tinted windows, a streak of lights that mirrored the chaos in my mind. We arrived at a private residential tower on Park Avenue, the kind of building where the doorman knows your name before you even step out of the vehicle. We took the private elevator straight to the top floor. When the doors slid open, I stepped into a world of wealth I had only ever seen in movies. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the entire city skyline, a billion sparkling lights laid out beneath us. But I didn't care about the view. The moment the elevator doors closed, the pretense dropped. There was no awkward fumbling, no hesitation. Veronica moved toward me, and that composed, icy demeanor she held at the bar melted away into something fierce. That night wasn't just about intimacy. It was an exorcism. It was a collision of grief, rage, and a desperate need to feel wanted. We were two wounded animals licking each other's wounds, tried to erase the memory of our spouses with every touch. But as the hours passed and the initial fire of vengeance burned down to embers, something unexpected happened. Lying there in the dim light of that massive master bedroom, I realized this wasn't just a hollow act of revenge. Beneath the designer clothes and the steel exterior, Veronica was just as broken as I was. We found a strange, twisted comfort in each other's arms, a connection born from the ashes of our marriages. Usually, in stories like this, the morning after is a part where the protagonist wakes up drowning in a sea of regret. They stare at the ceiling, head pounding, wondering, what have I done? I expected that guilt to hit me the moment I opened my eyes. I expected to feel like the bad guy. But as sunlight flooded through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, I realized something shocking. I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in months, I felt calm. I felt powerful. I rolled over, but the other side of the bed was empty. The sheets were still cool. I sat up, checking my phone on the nightstand. There were 14 missed calls and 6 texts from Jessica. Where are you? I'm worried. Did you go home? The irony was almost laughable. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried that her safety net had disappeared without permission. I found Veronica in the kitchen, an expansive space of marble and stainless steel that looked like it belonged in a cooking show. She was wearing a silk robe, sipping an espresso while leaning against the island counter. She didn't look like a woman who had just made a mistake. She looked like a general surveying a battlefield. Coffee, she offered, sliding a cup toward me as I walked in. Don't worry, it's strong. You're going to need it. I took the cup. So what happens now? Do we go back and pack our bags? Do we call the lawyers? Veronica shook her head slowly, a dark glint returning to her eyes. No, Robert. That's the amateur move. If we leave now, we're just the bitter spouses. They get to keep their jobs, their reputations, and their little affair. She walked around the counter and stood directly in front of me. We aren't going to say a word. You're going to go home, kiss your wife, and ask her how the gala went. I'm going to do the same with Gavin. You want to pretend this didn't happen? I asked, incredulous. I want to blindside them, she corrected. We play the long game. We don't just want a divorce, Robert. We want to destroy the pedestals they put themselves on. We are going to dismantle their egos, piece by piece, until there is nothing left. Are you in? I looked at my phone, seeing Jessica's name flash on the screen again. I silenced it. I'm in. The hardest part wasn't the lying. It was realizing how easy it was to lie to someone who wasn't really looking at you. When I finally walked to the front door of our house later that morning, Jessica was in the kitchen, nursing a hangover and scrolling through her phone. I told her I had felt ill at the gala, fell asleep in the car in the parking garage, and didn't want to wake her up when I came in. It was a flimsy excuse, full of holes. But she didn't even look up from her screen. She just said, "Oh, okay, you should have texted," and went right back to her coffee. Her indifference was my greatest weapon. That afternoon, the real work began. Veronica didn't just want me to be a partner in crime. She wanted me to be a weapon. We started meeting secretly during lunch breaks. Veronica came from old money, the kind of generational wealth that opens doors that aren't even visible to regular people. She took one look at my off-the-rack department store suits and shook her head. If you want to be the man like Gavin, she told me, you have to stop looking like his employee. She took me to a private tailor on Madison Avenue, a place with no sign out front. Over the next few weeks, my wardrobe transformed from baggy Gray slacks to sharp, bespoke Italian suits that fit like armor. But it wasn't just the clothes. Veronica coached me on my posture, my contact, and even the way I spoke. She taught me the art of silence. How to pause before answering to make people lean in. How to hold a gaze until the other person looks away. Confidence is just a game of chicken, Robert, she'd say while fixing my tie in the back of her town car. Don't blink first. The change was immediate. At work, people started treating me differently. My boss, who usually overlooked me for promotions, started asking for my opinion in meetings. I walked taller. I spoke with authority. And at home, I stopped chasing Jessica. I stopped asking how her day was. I stopped waiting up for her. I started living my own life. And for the first time in our marriage, Jessica started looking at me with something other than boredom. She was confused. She sensed a shift in the power dynamic, but she was too arrogant to realize that the ground beneath her feet was already crumbling. The dynamic in our marriage didn't just shift. It completely flipped. For years, I was a satellite orbiting Jessica's planet, constantly adjusting my trajectory to suit her needs. But now, I had my own gravity, and she didn't know how to handle it. Jessica started coming home earlier, not because she wanted to see me, but because the paradise she had built with Gavin was starting to crack. One evening, she stormed through the door, tossing her designer bag onto the sofa with a frustration I hadn't seen before. Usually, this would be the moment I rushed over, offered her a glass of wine, and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" Instead, I stayed in the armchair, reading a book on investment strategies that Veronica had recommended. I didn't even look up. "Gavin is being impossible," she vented, pacing the living room floor. "His corporate card got declined at lunch today. Can you believe that? The bank froze some of his accounts for a security check or something. He was humiliated." I turned a page, hiding the smirk that was threatening to break across my face. Security check. Right, that was Veronica's handiwork. She had begun quietly tightening the noose around Gavin's finances, freezing joint assets that he had taken for granted. "Sounds stressful," I said flatly, not offering an ounce of sympathy. Jessica stopped pacing and looked at me, really looked at me. She noticed the new haircut. She noticed the tailored shirt I was wearing, a shirt she hadn't bought for me. She noticed that I wasn't desperate for her attention anymore. "You're different lately, Robert," she said, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "You're always busy. You're dressing better. You look happy." It was an accusation, not a compliment. In her twisted logic, my happiness was a sign that something was wrong. She was so used to me being miserable without her that my independence felt like a threat. "I'm just focusing on myself, Jessica," I replied, standing up and walking past her toward the kitchen. "I realize I've been neglecting my own potential waiting around for you." She stood there, speechless. The guilt of her own affair was making her paranoid. She started checking my phone when I was in the shower, looking for another woman, but she wouldn't find one. Veronica and I were too smart for digital trails. The irony was delicious. The cheating wife was losing her mind, wondering if her loyal husband was stepping out, all while her lover's empire was being dismantled from the inside out. Our affair was nothing like the cheap, tawdry sneaking around that Jessica and Gavin were doing. They met in hotels near the office, rushing through lunch hours, terrified of being seen. Veronica and I, we met in plain sight, but in a world so elevated that our spouses simply couldn't reach us. We dined at members-only clubs on the Upper East Side, where cell phones were banned, and the waiters were trained to be deaf and blind. We spent weekends at her family's private vineyard in the Hudson Valley. But the most intoxicating part wasn't the luxury or even the physical intimacy, though God knows that was incredible. It was the intellectual connection. We were building a war room. Veronica and I had moved past the initial explosion of anger. We were now operating with surgical precision. Over candlelit dinners, we didn't whisper sweet nothings. We exchanged intelligence. I became the mole inside Jessica's life, and Veronica became the executioner in Gavin's. One Tuesday night, while eating sea bass at a restaurant that had a 6-month waiting list, I slid a manila folder across the table to Veronica. "Jessica is leading the pitch for the Monolitech account next week. I told her quietly. It's the biggest contract of the year. If she lands it, Gavin gets a massive bonus, and Jessica gets a partnership. She's been working on the slide deck at home. I made a copy. Veronica didn't open the folder immediately. She just rested her hand on it, her fingers manicured to perfection, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her lips. The monolith account, she mused. The CEO of that tech company is an old college friend of my father's. He hates instability. He hates scandals. She's using Gavin's projected revenue numbers to sell the pitch. I added, taking a sip of wine. Numbers that are slightly inflated. Perfect, Veronica whispered. 2 days later, the sabotage was set in motion. Veronica didn't do anything crude like deleting files. Instead, she made a single phone call to her father's friend. She casually mentioned a rumor about an SEC investigation into Gavin's firm, a rumor that she, of course, had planted to a shell company. By the time Jessica walked into that boardroom, the client was already looking for a reason to say no. We were dismantling their future, brick by brick, and the best part was they still thought they were the ones in control. They say that when it rains, it pours. But for Gavin and Jessica, it didn't just rain, it was a hurricane. The fallout from the sabotage pitch was immediate and catastrophic. I was sitting in the living room, calmly going over some personal finances, when the front door flew open. It wasn't the confident entrance of a career woman anymore. Jessica practically fell into the hallway. Her hair was a mess, her mascara was smudged beneath her eyes, and her hands were trembling as she dropped her keys. She looked like she had seen a ghost. In a way, she had the ghost of her own career dying right in front of her. They walked out. Robert, she choked out, her voice cracking. 5 minutes into the presentation, the CEO of Monolith, he stopped me, he threw the report on the table, and asked why our projected revenue didn't match the federal filings. He knew, Robert. He knew about the inflated numbers. I kept my face perfectly neutral, though inside I was cheering. That sounds serious, Jessica. What did Gavin say? Gavin? She laughed hysterically, a sound devoid of any humor. Gavin is losing his mind. The moment the clients walked out, a team of external auditors walked in. Someone tipped off the board about financial irregularities. They locked down the servers. They confiscated laptops. They escorted us out of the building like criminals. She walked toward me, tears streaming down her face, reaching out for the comfort I had given her freely for 7 years. She wanted me to hold her, to tell her it would all be okay, to be the steady rock she could cling to while the storm raged. But I didn't move. I didn't open my arms. I stayed seated, watching her unravel with a detachment that chilled the room. I don't know what to do, she sobbed, freezing when she realized I wasn't hugging her back. My job, my reputation, everything is on the line. I could go to jail if they think I was part of fraud. I looked her dead in the eye, my expression hardening. You always told me you were the one who handled the big decisions, Jessica. You said you didn't need me to understand your world. So handle it. You're a strong woman. Figure it out. I stood up and walked past her, leaving her standing alone in the hallway, stunned and shivering. The facade was gone. The glamorous executive lifestyle she had cheated on me to maintain was dissolving into ash, and for the first time, she realized that the man she betrayed was the only one who wasn't drowning. Desperation makes people do reckless things. For Gavin and Jessica, that desperation centered around one final Hail Mary play, the Hamptons Summer Solstice Gala. This was Veronica's event. Every year, she hosted the most exclusive charity dinner on the East Coast at her family's sprawling oceanfront estate. It was a kind of event where senators rubbed elbows with tech moguls, and where a single handshake could save a dying career. Gavin was banking on this night. He was convinced that if he could just charm the right investors and show his face, he could spin the audit as a minor clerical error and secure enough funding to make the problem disappear. On the morning of the event, the tension in our house was palpable. Jessica was running around like a headless chicken, packing her bags. She looked exhausted, her usual polished veneer cracking under the weight of impending doom. I'll be gone for the weekend, she announced, not meeting my eyes as she threw a silk dress into her suitcase. Gavin needs me there to manage the press. It's going to be a war zone, Robert. Don't wait up. I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee, watching her lie to me for the 100th time. Do you want me to come? Support you? It sounds like a big night. She froze, then let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. You? God, no. Robert, this is high-stakes corporate politics. You wouldn't know what to say to these people. You just stand there. Please, just stay here and don't complicate things. All right, I said, my voice calm. I'll stay out of your way. She left without a kiss goodbye, speeding out of the driveway in her lease-to-own Mercedes, convinced she was leaving her boring, simple husband behind to watch TV on the couch. She had no idea. 10 minutes after she left, my phone buzzed. It was Veronica. The text was short. The helicopter is waiting at the helipad. It's showtime. I wasn't going to the gala as Jessica's plus one. I was going as the guest of honor. Veronica had created a backstory for me. I was attending as a representative of Vanguard Holdings, a private equity firm looking to buy out distressed assets, which, ironically, was exactly what Gavin's company had become. I walked into the bedroom and pulled the garment bag out of the back of the closet. Inside was a tuxedo that Veronica had flown in from Milan. As I put on, fastening the cufflinks that caught the light, I looked in the mirror. The man looking back wasn't the sad, lonely husband from 6 months ago. He was a shark. Jessica told me I wouldn't know what to say to these people. She was wrong. Tonight, I was going to leave them speechless. The walk from the bottom of the staircase to the center of the room felt like a victory lap. The crowd, sensing the shift in power, parted for us like the Red Sea. I could feel the eyes of every major investor and CEO in the tri-state area burning into us. But for the first time in my life, I didn't want to hide. I wanted to be seen. Gavin was paralyzed on stage, his face glistening with sweat, the damning spreadsheet still glowing behind him. But it was Jessica who broke the silence. She pushed through the crowd, nearly tripping over her own gown in her haste to get to me. She looked frantic, her eyes darting between me and Veronica. "Robert?" she screeched, her voice cracking with a mix of confusion and indignation. "What the hell are you doing here? And why are you with her?" She reached out to grab my arm, the way she used to when she wanted to drag me away from a conversation she found boring. But this time I stepped back. Her hand grasped at empty air. "Don't touch me, Jessica," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of that ballroom, it sounded like a gunshot. "I don't understand," she stammered, looking at my tuxedo, my posture, the way I stood beside the woman she had unknowingly challenged. "You're supposed to be at home. You're nobody. I was the man who paid your bills while you were busy destroying your reputation." I corrected her coldly. "I was the safety net you thought would always be there to catch you. But I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm the consequence." Before she could respond, Gavin scrambled down from the stage, his face purple with rage. He stormed toward us, trying to salvage the last shreds of his machismo. "Get the hell out of my house," he roared, pointing a shaking finger at me. "And take your pathetic husband with you, Veronica." Veronica didn't even flinch. She simply took a sip of her champagne and smiled, a smile that was terrifyingly calm. "Your house?" she laughed softly. "Oh, Gavin, you haven't paid the mortgage on this estate in 6 months. My trust fund has. And as for the company," she gestured to the screen behind him, "my father's board of directors just held an emergency vote 5 minutes ago. You're fired, darling. Effective immediately. Security is already clearing out your office." Gavin looked like he had been struck by lightning. He slumped, the fight draining out of him instantly. I turned back to Jessica, who was now trembling, tears finally spilling over as the reality of her situation crashed down on her. "And by the way," I added, reaching into my jacket pocket and pulling out a folded white envelope, "my lawyer filed these this morning. You wanted a life with him? You got it. Just don't expect to keep the house, the car, or a single dime of my money." I dropped the divorce papers at her feet. She stared down at them, sobbing, realizing she had traded a diamond for a rock. And now, she was left with nothing but dust. They say that the best revenge isn't anger, it's silence. And trust me, the silence I've given them has been deafening. It has been 6 months since that night in the Hamptons. The fallout was spectacular, the kind of train wreck you almost felt bad watching. Almost. Gavin is currently buried under a mountain of lawsuits, fighting to stay out of federal prison for embezzlement. His reputation is so toxic that even his old golf buddies won't return his calls. As for Jessica, the last I heard, she was let go from her firm. The industry talks, and nobody wants to hire a marketing executive who helped cook the books for her lover. She tried to contact me for weeks after the divorce was finalized. I'd see her number pop up on my phone, leaving desperate voicemails apologizing, saying she made a mistake, saying she missed the stability I provided. I never listened to a single one. I just hit delete. I'm not in the suburbs of New York anymore. Right now, I'm standing on the stone terrace of a villa in Lake Como, Italy. The sun is setting over the water, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. The air smells of lemon trees and salt water, a far cry from the stale air of that hotel bar where my life fell apart. I feel a hand slide around my waist from behind, followed by the soft press of cheek against my back. You're thinking about them again, aren't you? Veronica asks, her voice light teasing. I turn around in her arms, looking down into those fierce blue eyes that saved me. Not them. I smile, kissing her forehead. I was thinking about the moment you sat down next to me. I was thinking about how lucky I was that you decided to make me an offer. She laughs, clinking her wine glass against mine. Best business deal I ever made. Looking at her, and looking at the life we built, a life based on honesty, respect, and a shared refusal to ever settle for less, I realized she was right. That night at the bar, when she asked me to forget my wife and take a chance on her, I didn't just find a way to get even. I found a way to get free. So, if you ever find yourself sitting in the dark, feeling like the world has turned its back on you, remember my story. Sometimes, the worst thing that can happen to you is actually the door opening to the best thing that ever will. A year has passed since I left New York, and looking back, it feels like I'm remembering a stranger's life. Veronica and I didn't just run away to Italy to hide. We used our combined skills, her financial genius and my background in logistics, to launch a boutique consultancy firm. Ironically, we specialize in corporate crisis management and internal fraud detection. We help companies catch people like Gavin before they can destroy everything. Business is booming, and for the first time, I wake up every morning excited to go to work. But the biggest change isn't in my bank account. It's in the mirror. I used to think that being a good man meant staying silent, keeping the peace, and enduring disrespect for the sake of loyalty. I was wrong. Loyalty is a gift, not an obligation, and it should never be given to people who treat you like an option. Jessica is still in New York, working a mid-level job at a small agency, living in a cramped apartment. We don't speak, but I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes energy, and quite frankly, I'm too busy being happy to waste any energy on the past. I've learned that the ultimate comeback isn't about hurting the people who hurt you. It's about outgrowing them. It's about realizing that you were never the problem. You were just in the wrong story with the wrong people. And that, my friends, is the story of how I lost a cheating wife and gained a life I never dared to dream of. What about you? If you were in Robert's shoes, sitting at that hotel bar, would you have taken Veronica's offer? Or would you have handled it differently? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment down below. Let me know if you are hashtag Team Revenge or hashtag Team Move On. If this story inspired you to stand up for your own worth, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story from Inspiration Seeker. We bring you the best tales of resilience, justice, and turning points every single week. Remember, you are the author of your own life. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. Until next time, stay inspired.